And so I don't believe this.
Yay, now it's recording.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for noticing that.
Yeah, I wanted to mention what Judith just brought up is that everybody should have access to the document that Deborah shared with everyone, which is the Housing Oversight Task Force response to comments draft of the draft law document. And we're going to go through, after Deborah gives us an overview, we're going to go through pages 4 and 5 of that document, which are the changes to the draft law list. And there's 14 different items, most, maybe a third of which are approved. But that being said, I'd like to hand this over to Deborah and have her give us an overview and perspective of since we've last met in June.
Right. Thank you, Kirk. So I obviously I missed the last meeting, but I did get to watch the recording, and I think I was really appreciative of all the work that everyone's been doing. So I just wanted to just give a quick update of what we have been doing since that meeting, what we're working on now today, and what we have before us in the coming weeks. So we are on, I think, a pretty good timeline, and we're making a lot of progress. So so you met in June, and were able to discuss a few of the comments that had come in, and made some decisions based on those comments that are being incorporated into a revised draft code, as well as there were also comments that were not substantive, but were more proofreading, and those comments are also have been made to a draft code. So as we go through this, we will be updating, Nan will be updating the code to make sure it reflects everything that has been discussed and decided by the task force. And that will enable us to present to the town board a revised version that reflects the comments. So what I wanted to say about that, and again, you all know this, but just to give everyone sort of bring everybody back, because it's been a while since we met. So we've had since
Judith, I see your hand, and we'll come back to you after.
So Deborah's done.
Yeah, when Deborah's finished.
Okay, give me a minute.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, got you. Thank you for pointing it out, Kirk. I probably wouldn't have seen it, Judith, because my head's in another space. But anyway, so we received a lot of comments after we submitted officially to the town board in April, including to the county for their formal referral. And they sent us back comments. Some basically they were very supportive. They said there were some things that they wanted us to look at, and there were some things as a planning board, which is the way the system works, that they were requiring us to revise, and and those and we have accepted those revisions as a task force, and we are submitting to the town board the revised code that will include those revisions. I also wanted to mention that since that time, we also, of course, have had the public comment email zoning updates at woodstockny.org has been open to all boards, committees, all residents of the town, and we've received a substantial amount of comments. And so in order to evaluate everything and make sure that we are covering everything, I've been working with a subgroup of Jeff Collins and Judy Kerman, and very, very diligently since I came back from my trip in actually latter part of July, many, many hours. We have gone line by line, literally word by word, with every comment that we got, whether it be from the county, our town planning board, individuals, emails that came in to the zoning updates that had questions. So nothing has been left out. And so what we've been doing is going through that and trying to come up with a way to evaluate and respond. And all of that is in the document that we want you, the draft document that we want you to review, not today, but to just, give us any comments back on the way that we're progressing through all the comments. The one other thing I wanted to say is that the Housing Committee got us their comments in late July, and they were very lengthy, and they all participated. And some of their comments are small, and some of them have been incorporated in the previous comments we received that we've already looked at. But we are going to devote a separate meeting to some of the things that they wanted us to look at, and specifically how we're dealing with definitions of affordability and affordable housing and eligibility and administration. So I think so that's kind of what is remaining. We anticipate that the town board is going to schedule a public hearing probably in early fall. Actually, Bill McKenna had me on McKenna's Corner this morning. And one of the things that he brought up was the public hearing, which he said he's shooting for late September. But that will be another opportunity. So we will get our work done with all the comments that we are getting now by over the next couple of weeks. We will provide that to the town board along with the response document that we're working on that really gives more information about what's been received and how we've answered questions and that sort of thing. That will be also information for the town board. And then it's really at that point in the town board's hands again until the public hearing, and then the town board can give us direction based on any other additional comments that the town board receives after that. And that will also probably require us to do more evaluation and discussion and any changes that the town board or we feel are make sense after those final comments come in. So
Great.
That's kind of where we're at.
Well, thank you, Deborah, for that quick summary. Yes, Judith.
I assume that just as we have changes made to the draft law up at the top, or the list of comments and then the changes, that the changes will be highlighted in the same way when we send it to the town board, so that they understand that if they read it before, that these are things that are different. They don't have to read the whole document again unless they choose to.
A very good point. And I just want to say that, and we can, we want to make sure, right, that there is a clear path to understanding what has changed since the draft law has gone in and why. And so that's, I think, Judith, just to mention again, the work that you and Jeff and I did has really been invaluable to organizing our thinking and in being able, I think, to communicate it.
I think we can condense some of this list. There are some redundancies in it, but you're also suggesting adding reasons, or just kind of, this is a very digestible piece of document, these 14 points,
at this point,
13 points.
Yeah.
So I think rather than get into the formatting of it now and what we need to include, I think we should, I thank you for, I think the formatting does work. And I think we should use that as a working document for us for right now. And
Yep.
then we can see how we might want to massage it or whatever to make it the most,
Yeah, I'm not talking about doing any editing now.
but good point.
There's
yeah.
14 points here. There probably could be 13 or even 12, but
Yeah.
Right.
this is
Yeah. And
digestible.
some of them, right. Some of them were redundant. They got combined and stuff
And
like that.
we could do something like live links to the explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
So that you can just look at this and say, these are the changes. And
right.
then if you want to know why we made them, then you could go to that.
Yeah.
That's a very good suggestion.
Footnotes.
Laura?
So-
whatever, your hand?
Whenever Judy's finished. Okay, so a couple of things. I just want to say thank you to everybody because as you all know, I was away for a bit and plus life has been really busy, as I'm sure you know. So anyway, thank you very much for everybody who's just jumping in and doing so much. Appreciate that. A couple of questions. One is the housing committee comments that you mentioned, there'll be separate meetings to go through that. Will that be the full HOTF committee or will that be the subcommittee of Deb, you, Jeff, and Judy?
No, it'll be the full committee. You guys, there's a body of work that Deborah alluded to from the housing committee that we're going to
Sure.
have a meeting specifically focused on
Right.
the housing committee's comments.
Okay.
So
And-
all
and-
should work on that? Or
Pardon?
whoever shows up?
Yeah, I think there'll be some prep to that meeting.
There'll be prep to that meeting,
and
right?
various people will be involved. I want to echo what Deborah mentioned is that the Herculean effort that Judith and Jeff and you, Deborah, made since we've met last, almost 40 hours of work total, including everybody, meaning, you met 12 hours, more than 12 hours. So you add times 3, that's 36, so it's a considerable amount of time has been put into it. I'm from construction, so I clock things by man hours, if you will. Sorry for the sexist comment.
I used to do billable
Yeah,
hours
same
when I
thing.
was an
Yeah.
environmental consultant and every quarter hour.
Exactly. So anyways, the amount of time that Jeff and Judith and Deborah put in is really huge in order to get it to where we are now and what we're looking at now. So thank you
We're not
for that.
finished.
effort. And we're not finished.
But it
The
was
other thing I
really
wanted to
good.
mention, the other thing I did want to mention, Deborah, excuse me, is that we have a revised planning board comment now that's official.
Thank you.
And so that too is something that needs to be incorporated into the review because that revision is something that's important to make note of. And Judith, thank you for your efforts in regards to that.
And I also shared with Deborah some comments of Peter's that he didn't make in the meeting that I really think are useful and important.
Yeah, I think they're on this list. One of them is on
I
this
Yeah,
added
list.
them.
Yeah.
I put it in an email
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
added to the
those
list.
comments are valuable and we're going to
Yeah.
review them because Peter's perspective is very, very important to acknowledge and he brings a wonderful perspective from his years of being in the leadership role and on the planning board.
and
So
the surveyor.
And one more thing, Deborah, you want to add?
I did want to add one more thing when you're done.
No, I'm done.
So I think I said this, but I just want to re-emphasize it. Every comment we got was given absolute attention and consideration. And we recognize that there is much more attention being given to this generally in the community than there has been since we started this a couple of years ago and since the housing committee started it a couple of years before that. That's not unusual. And it's challenging because it's a lot for people to absorb. But it is an arc and it is a living document. And we're making a lot of progress in part because we've gotten some really good input from people and also because we've stuck with it. So again, kudos to everybody for sticking with it and to the people who've given us their comments. We really appreciate it.
One more thing before we get started on the 14 comments and what we need to do today. Yes, Laura, go ahead.
So as is happening this whole campaign season, there's this misinformation abounding. I heard I heard tell that some website page, Facebook page, whatever, something somewhere was saying, oh, nobody's expecting comments anymore. Would it make sense to have any paragraph to go on the town website just to say, communicate exactly what you just said, Deborah? Every comment received has been given attention and consideration, and the zoning updates ID is still active, because somebody, so I just think it might be handy to just put a paragraph and have it pinned to the top of the website and probably
That's
the town
great.
Facebook page.
Excellent suggestion.
And make in that paragraph, the comments have resulted in changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Totally.
Yeah. So excellent points, and I'm glad that they got brought up because
You know,
we'll
every
make
time
sure
I
that-
hear, oh, this was an opaque process and we didn't know anything about it, we didn't have input to it. No.
it's not true. It's not true.
Every
We know it's
single
not true.
Totally
comment we
not
got
true.
is getting
Yeah.
attention and response, and many of them are resulting in changes. So
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So with that being said, what we're going to do now for the balance of our time together, and Laura, did you get a response back from Jeff?
Not yet.
I know. Yeah, he was trying to rejigger his work.
All right. Well, whatever. Just want to make sure that Jeff has been informed that we are meeting.
So I did not, I can always call him. I just texted him. I can try ring. I
No,
can
I
ring
think
him.
texting is the best way to reach him. If you call him right now, probably go to voicemail.
Yeah, okay.
So
no-
I
no
think that
response.
You've used the best means to reach him, and he knows.
Okay.
He's a big boy.
Well, and he's juggling stuff too. I am well aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, he's a. So with that in mind, we're going to move into discussions
Right.
and go through and review, quickly review the ones that have already been approved, just for
Okay.
the record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first one.
Okay.
And then just note that this one has been approved. The first ADU cannot be rented as a short-term rental. It can only be rented as a long-term rental. And that's been approved by this task force.
Right.
The second one, the first ADU cannot be used as a short-term rental. And this is the case for existing and new ADUs. So that's like an addition to the first comment.
Right.
And that's been
they could
approved.
be combined.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
combine them. We could probably
I-
create 1 through 4 and have it all be ADU oriented.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
I got a comment on that.
Yeah, what's
So
that?
we're saying people that nobody's grandfathered. We're saying if somebody in 2023 had one ADU and it was an STR, we're saying they will not get approved in 2024. There's no grandfathering.
Well, that's how this can be translated. I think that it's up to the board to modify this and give people a longer period of time to make those changes, whether it's not in the first year or whatever, but that's up to the board. We're just
Town
trying to
board.
establish the town board. We're just trying to establish a line, if you will. Yes, Deborah.
Yeah, so in that regard, since this is a discussion and it might be something for the town board to consider. And I think the STR group may have already brought up something about sunsetting, or that those are things that towns do when they pass new laws. And so there are other things that are happening with the STR law that are outside of this. And so, but to the extent that it affects this,
Right.
yeah, I think the town board should consider it.
Right. And we need to give support to those residents that have short-term rentals and to make that migration. And we'll figure that too can
Right.
be something the town board can.
Yeah, how to
create.
how to migrate. Yes, how to
Yeah.
migrate current
Good way
STRs.
of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the third item, which is also approved, the second ADU cannot be used as a short-term rental unless the first ADU is deed restricted to be an affordable long-term rental unit, an ALTR, subject to all other town laws regarding short-term rentals that have been approved.
Yep.
So that clarifies that. The fourth one is having to do with and Deborah, I want you to read this, and it needs approval.
Okay.
The primary residence cannot be used as a short-term rental. And we need to, and Judith, you have your hand up about this?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we need to be clear about whether we're saying you can't rent out a bedroom or you're saying you can't rent out the entire building.
Yeah.
Are you
And-
talking about for short-term rental or just?
Yes,
in-
I'm talking about for short-term rental. I
Mm.
think not allowing somebody to do something that's essentially kind of a bed and breakfast operation would be overstepping. I don't think we
Mhm.
need to do that. To say
Right.
you cannot rent the entire primary residence as a short-term rental, do we mean ever, or we mean only if you got an ADU? The language needs to be a lot
It needs to
tighter.
be clarified. This is kind of a, but Deborah, did you have anything to add to this discussion?
No, well, I think it does need to be clarified. And I'm interested in Judith's points to help us to kind of come up
I
with,
will work with you on it. 'Cause we
okay,
really
let's work
need
on
to
this and see if we
look at
can
all the
come up some
implications.
discussion points and pros and cons.
Yep.
And come back to this group.
Label it for discussion, because
Yeah.
it really needs it.
Yeah, Laura, go ahead.
So if I heard you right, so we've already said one ADU can't be an STR, and then I think I heard you just say the primary residence can't be an STR, which means you can't have an STR
That's
unless
right.
you've got a second ADU and the first one is long-term.
We need to talk it through and figure out what we mean.
That
Well,
number
well,
4
but-
needs to be
It's not a good
clarified,
time to do
Laura.
it.
There's no
Well,
doubt about it.
I understand that you want to figure out what you want to say, but I thought we ought to discuss together here what we want it to mean. So you're just going to go off and make a decision.
No.
We're not gonna make a decision
No, we're
without
not
the
gonna make
task
a
force.
decision. We're gonna come up with a better description of what we're trying to achieve here and bring it back to this group for discussion.
Oh, okay.
Because
Right,
I
and
think,
And Laura, we
This is
will
not the
always do
meeting for
that.
that.
Yeah,
This
we
is
will
not the meeting for
always
that.
do that,
but
Laura.
the one thing I will say though, is this is not a 1 or a 2 ADU thing. And maybe that's part of the clarity. If you have a primary residence and you have an ADU, some people move into their ADU and they rent out their primary residence. So we're just going to clarify this, come back with a clear explanation of what we're proposing to consider, and then
Okay.
how we need to.
Okay, and just for clarification then, so you're not saying if somebody has a primary residence and 0 ADU on the property, you're not telling them they can't STR their primary residence?
No,
If they meet, no, we're not
short
saying.
answer is
So
no,
this
we're
has,
not saying that.
this has nothing to do with if you don't have an ADU. This only has to do if you do have an ADU, you
Correct.
can't have your primary or
We
your
need
first
to
ADU.
make that clear.
Correct.
Yeah,
It is not
and that's,
clear at the
there's
moment.
no question.
And
that
there'll
it's not clear.
always be the other SDR regulations that will apply, always.
Yes. So with that, what we're stating is that number 4 is going to require further work, further intentionality, and what we're trying to clarity, I should say, around what the intent of this issue is, and then bring that back to the task
That was
force
good,
for
thank you.
discussion.
Is the intent clear from what the county said, or we still have to figure out what they meant by what they said?
We have to figure out what we meant, what we say in that sentence.
But
Taking
we're doing it,
freestanding doesn't work.
but we're doing it because the county said something, and if we
No.
reread what the county
No.
said, I thought that's what we're going through. I
Well,
thought
that
we were
might have
going
been
through here's
one
what the
part of
county
it,
said.
Laura, but
Maybe
there
a
were,
part of it, we're talking about the impact of all the comments. And
Okay.
this is boiled
Alright.
down to these items that either have been approved or need to be approved or need to be further discussed.
Yeah.
All
precisely.
the comments went into this.
But I'm as you can see, so I've flagged it.
Yeah,
And
okay.
if we need to circle back to you, Laura, which might be a good idea also because of everybody's been away and stuff like that. We want to make sure we cover all the bases.
Well, I guess I'm just gonna say, I'm a little, I mean, I know that we as a body approved this, the first ADU can't be an STR. Me as a person didn't like it. So I'm still, it just seems all of a sudden, I mean, my wish would be that the STR law would be what puts on the brakes for STRs, not that we're now saying, hey, if you have an ADU, I don't like the idea that, if anybody can have one ADU or one STR, I don't care if it's the primary residence or the first ADU, the second ADU, but they can only get one anyway, and it's only according to the cap. So it just seems getting really restrictive as we're even considering, if you have a primary residence and an ADU, you can't do either for an STR. It just seems so, we're just getting really restrictive. And the STRs to some degree keep the center of town alive. I was here back when people were afraid that Woodstock was going to go out of business. The
Mm.
shops were closing down. There weren't enough people. And I don't want to be draconian about yanking the tourism out. So I do have a concern. I just want to share it as whoever goes off into the side and thinks this through. I just want to share my concern.
Well, and
We'll
I,
bring it back. Go ahead.
right, and I just want to emphasize, no decisions are being made in any subgroups. All that we're doing is evaluating, coming up with pluses,
Language.
minuses, and
Yeah.
if there is input, like your input into that, Laura, it's critical and to help in our discussions.
Yeah, okay.
Judith?
Yeah, the problem is though, item 2, which says this is the case for existing first ADUs and someone doesn't build a second one, is implicated in Laura's concern.
Yeah, exactly, it is.
Then you're not going to grandfather because it's saying,
we-
hey, you're done. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
not going to
I mean,
grandfather.
even with the sunset, it still means could mean a major change for people. So we say we've approved it, but
Right.
the question is, should we rethink that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we now know that we're gonna revisit this item.
right.
And
Well, there is
its
one-
effect on other items in 1 through 4.
Yeah, there is one
So-
more thing I would like to say.
Mhm.
And that is, as the zoning revision committee, we did get the STR task, there was an STR task force, and Maria Elena and the task force did provide their document. It is now in the hands of the zoning revision committee, who will be taking what they did, which was not, here's your law update. It's kind of like, here's what we think ought to go in a law update. It's not actually a written law proposal. That work will still be done. But I just want to let you know, the STR committee output has been received by the
Mhm.
zoning revision committee. It's on our list, but we're doing a couple other things. And so I'm not, we got some things we need to get further on before we can really take it up in depth. But we do have
Great.
the STR on our plate.
I
Yeah,
was
thanks for that update.
actually, Maria Elena had said she was also going to send it to us,
Do you want
That
it?
would be an awfully good thing.
and we have not received it.
Okay, I will send.
Yeah, that'd be great, Laura. Thank
I
you.
mean,
Which is-
knowing where their head is would help us do this right.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah, we
Right.
want to
And I know that they've been,
collaborate as much as possible.
High Lord Farmer has told me he's been working with them at their request. Again, we don't really have any of that information, but, oh, here comes Jeff.
Oh, yay,
Yeah.
okay. And while Jeff joins, I will say that as the zoning revision committee picks up what the STR committee gave, we may alter some, because Jeff, as he joins, will probably mention the Ulster County likes the town of Ulster STR. So as we digest what the STR committee gives us, we may also want to adjust it to see what town of Ulster did. So I wouldn't take it as 100%. I mean, you can see what was on the minds of the 6 people that were
Sure.
on that committee, but it will likely evolve. I just will say that.
And
Yeah.
that's why also we say in all of our code writing that
Mhm.
there is this other set of regulations on STR that have to be adhered to,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
whatever shape they're in.
Yeah. Welcome,
Okay.
Jeff.
Welcome, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. So we're gonna we've gone through we're on page 4 and 5 of the document of the
Changes to the draft law.
responses to the comments of the changes to the draft law.
And we're going through the 14 items.
Yeah, and we're on number 5 now, and I'm going to read it. It's we're reviewing the ones that have been approved also for the record. And number 5 is all payment in lieu of affordable dwellings has been removed. So that's an acknowledgement. We've approved that already. We've removed all language associated with payment in lieu of. Number 6, the standardized.
Can I just say something about
Yeah,
that?
I'm sorry, I didn't see your
Right.
hand.
And no, I just put it up. I'm going to be really quick. I've been reading the City of Kingston form-based code, which they've just adopted, cost them $500,000.
Yes, it did.
Yes. They actually did put in a payment in lieu of, and I read through it and I can see a lot of problems with it.
Yep.
So, very interesting, just a little tidbit. I just wanted to add, I think we made the right decision responding to all the comments we got in making this change.
And I'd like to make one more comment about this matter too. In my opinion, the reason why it's good that we removed it is because what the town board should do, if they want something like this, is they should put together the policy and the procedures and all the processes associated with that payment, so that it can be fully implemented when it does get passed. So that there's not this like, unclarity around how this thing would be administered and managed and enforced after, if it were to ever exist. So that enough said on the number 6 is to standardize the minimum size of ADU to be 300 square feet, consistent with the state appendix Q for tiny homes, and maximum size of 1,000 square feet, and always subordinate to the primary dwelling. This needs approval.
Right.
Yes, Judith.
Got a call yesterday from Graydon Yerrick, and
Yeah.
he was building, he's designing an ADU, and he wanted to know if they could go to 1,100 square feet. And I said, I didn't think so.
Mhm.
And his reaction was he thinks he can manage it.
What does
Yeah,
that
what
mean?
is it?
What does that mean?
Well, he was trying to figure it out. He went to Butch, and Butch is no better able to understand the current law than I am. And the main house is 3,000 and something.
Mhm.
And I said, I expected that we were recommending 1,000.
Correct.
And he said, oh, I was thinking 1,100, but yeah, I could probably work with 1,000.
Yeah, so that's what
That's
he
a
can work out.
real world. That's a real
well,
world
that's-
test.
That's good to hear. Obviously, under current code, that restriction isn't there.
Right.
It just has
But
to
if you can
support-
figure out what it means, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
point.
it's
Which sends him
35%,
to
it's
zoning.
35, it's
Whatever that
35% of the existing building plus the,
Right.
it's so confusing.
It's very
Yeah.
confusing,
Yeah.
which
And
is
so we're trying to
fine with me.
simplify it. Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
And
I
that
agree.
is what we're again, sort of to reiterate, everything we're doing has 3 things in mind. Is it going to help us create more affordable housing? Is it going to be protecting our environment? And is it going to be simpler for the planning board, the building department, and the ZBA, and anyone else, and the property owners to use? So
Yeah.
that's our motto, I
Ease of
guess.
use. Yeah, ease of use. So on this matter, that number 6, and again, I am asking people to have that document available so you can reference it as we speak.
I move approval.
And we're going to move towards approval. So Judith, was that a move?
That was a motion to approve.
Okay, a motion to
And
approve.
we
We have a
can have
second?
discussion after it's seconded.
I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor of number 6?
Do we have any further discussion?
Okay, we have no
Excellent.
further discussion. All in favor of number 6, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, we have unanimous for the record of the people present.
Okay,
So that's now been approved.
great.
The next item, number 7, I'm going to read it for
Whoop.
purpose of record. ADUs must be subordinate to the primary residence. This is defined as the following. It has a larger setback from the front boundary, is smaller than the main structure, and the roof line must be lower than the primary structure. For a pre-existing structure being converted to an ADU, any exceptions to the subordinate requirements must be approved by the planning board. This needs to be approved.
I move approval.
Do we have any discussions before we have?
No, that's not the
Okay.
way it's
All right.
supposed to be done. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
First you second it, then you discuss it. Nobody
All
ever
right.
does it that way, but that's.
So
where
we
I'm
have a
going.
motion from Judith
And a second,
and Judith and Deborah seconds.
right.
Any discussions on this matter?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that we had said the roof line must be lower. I guess I'm not
Okay.
sure. I understand it's
That's a
gotta be
good
smaller.
question.
What's that?
That's a good
Small,
question.
smaller footprint rise. I didn't realize we said the roof line must be lower. That's,
If somebody raises the roof of their garage and puts a unit in, it might be higher than the primary, and that wouldn't violate the spirit of the thing.
it wouldn't, right, that's my thought. So I'm agreeing with everything, although I'm questioning that one.
Deborah?
Well, the other thing I'm questioning frankly is, do you want approval by the planning board? Because usually it's the ZBA.
Yeah,
When you're
ZBA.
gonna go against, when you have an exception, usually the ZBA, because the planning board always says, we follow the law. If you want to do something different, go to the ZBA.
Okay, first we're gonna go to Jeff. He has his hand up, and then Judith. And
so
then-
so Judith and I'm sorry, Deborah and I, when we were talking about this, added the roof line to what was talked about prior. We felt it was appropriate. we felt it was appropriate to give it to the planning board to determine that, because it's not an exception. It's something that we want them to be able to take a look at, and does it make sense? So it's
Right.
not an exception to the law, it's a way for them to potentially do something that could be okay if the planning board looks at it and says it's okay. My thought is, for example, if you have a pre-existing house and a pre-existing garage, like barn, that has a taller roof than the house, which is fairly normal, and you want to convert that into ADUs, I want the planning board to be able to say, yeah, go for it. So that was our thought on that.
So maybe we don't use the word exception, but I see Laura's hand up.
And,
Yeah, I thought I saw another hand
and
too.
Judith, you had your hand up first, and then Laura.
I'm not sure if somebody has a garage that's currently a single story and it can tolerate having a second story added to it, is that a pre-existing structure?
Mm.
That's a
Mhm.
case that I think might come up.
Right, right.
And I'm
Um,
also considering an ADU that's going to have a clear story, and I'm not sure it's going to be lower than the primary residence, probably, but it would
mhm,
be nice not to have to worry about it.
Yeah. Laura?
So what you said a minute ago, for a pre-existing structure like a barn that could well be higher than the other structure, we don't want to have an obstacle to making housing. So if somebody has a garage that's higher than the current roof line of the current house, or if somebody wants to convert a garage into a housing structure or a barn into a housing structure, I feel like we're putting an impediment in the way here, as opposed to saying, wow, that's great, we want more housing, go for it. So this roof line thing doesn't make sense to me. I get it that the footprint needs to be smaller, it needs to fit within the ADU size. I don't care how high the roof line is.
Yeah.
I agree.
Deborah?
And maybe you say must be similar or lower. Yeah, if you said similar or lower, then you got a little more leeway, but I don't like the way it's written.
Okay, Deborah?
Yeah, so I see that this is a tricky one, and I see it in part because of driving around and seeing both right next to me and elsewhere in Shady and elsewhere, where people have built accessory buildings, accessory dwellings without our new law, and that they overpower the primary residence. And I think the intent here, if I understand it, Jeff, and again, barns notwithstanding, because barns are typically larger than houses, was to have, and maybe this gets to be scale and character issue. And I'm just thinking out loud. And pardon?
Which
Go
is
ahead.
subjective.
Which is what, Judith?
Subjective.
Subjective.
And
Okay.
so who makes that determination? Is that something that comes before the planning board? My sense is the building inspector is just going to look and see if the numbers are okay. And he's going to, and I'm not sure what the ZBA would do in terms of a variance. So maybe, I think that's where Jeff and I were thinking the planning board might be the right board to be looking at this, but I don't know.
So Judith, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I think we need to make clear that if it's a modification of an existing structure, like putting a second floor on a existing
Garage.
building,
Yeah.
that's a legitimate possible thing. I do think the planning board is the right body, and it may be something that the civic design folks, even though they tend to limit their activity to the center of town, they don't have to.
Right.
But planning board could ask them for counsel. We can always, we have a right, I believe, to not take their advice, but generally we do.
So we have two more hands up, and I have my hand up too. So go ahead. Who was first, Jeff or Laura?
Probably Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
What was the actual text again? Because I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, I'll read it again, just that sentence.
Yeah.
This is defined as the following. It has a larger setback from the front boundary, is
Right.
smaller than the main structure, and the
Right.
roof line must be lower than the primary structure.
What's the exception about the roof line? Is there what does it say about exception?
Pre-existing structures.
It doesn't say anything about exceptions.
No,
Well,
it
it
Oh,
says,
no, it
for
says
pre-
for pre-existing structures being converted into an ADU, any exceptions to the subordinate requirements must be approved by the planning board.
I mean,
and I
to me,
think the planning board
that's
is the right
fine.
place to send it.
Yeah,
So if the barn exists already, you don't have to get an exception, you can just do it.
and, so what you're saying that the way it is okay with you?
It's okay, as I understand the way it's written is if you have a barn that's bigger than the house, you want to take it and make it an ADU, you do not need to go to the planning board.
But
But
what if
that's
you
not
have
what it
a,
says.
but what if you have a pre-existing structure like a single level garage and you double it, you go up and create an ADU in it and it's higher than primary residence?
Personally, I'd like to see that go to the planning board. Because I don't want it to overpower. I think,
Yeah.
someone given the license to overpower I mean, they can't overpower it on one extent because of the size limit, right?
Right.
There is that there too. But, and again, I don't care a lot about the roof line piece. I care about the other pieces more.
Yeah. And before Judith is Laura. Go ahead, Laura.
I'd be happier if you said, regarding the roof line, instead of saying the roof line must be lower, if you would say the roof line must be similar or lower, I'd be happier. Because then say you've got a structure and hey, it's a foot higher than the roof line of the main building, or it's equal. I don't see a problem with somebody proceeding with that. So if you said similar or lower, I would be solved for this roof line thing.
Okay, and Jeff?
Similar is
Oh,
in the
sorry,
eyes
Judith before Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, go ahead.
Similar is in the eyes of the beholder, which I do not want in code.
Right, right. I
All
agree
right,
with
so
that.
that's a vague statement. Okay,
Well, then I have an issue with the roof line statement.
yeah.
My suggestion would be that if we specify, including adding a second floor to a single level, it has to go to the planning board to determine it still appears to be subordinate, but it's legal. That's almost certainly going to be a higher roof line, but that's the only exception that really makes sense to me. Other than barns, I mean, where you're converting and modifying. That's the question.
It
So
doesn't,
what I'm going to propose at this point is that we revise the writing, the language of this and bring it to the next meeting and vote on it there. Because there's too many nuances here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to propose that we do
Table.
just that. Yes.
I like to not hold things over. I mean, this is a pretty small, to me, a pretty small thing. If we
Yeah.
keep holding things over, we're never going to get finished.
Okay, so
We're
you're
all here.
proposing to not
You
postpone.
want to propose an
approval.
amendment, Jeff? Propose some language.
So I just want to get what's your concern, Laura, because you're the one with the biggest concern. What is it that you would like to be able to do that can't be done?
I have a concern that if somebody has a barn or a second structure that is taller than the primary structure and they want to convert it from a non-housing use to a housing use, we should be encouraging that. And this sentence saying that, and this indicates to me that we're going to have a blocker. And when you have to be approved by the planning board, you're not giving the planning board clear-cut direction of what to approve and what not to approve. So you still have mushiness. So I'm not happy with the
premise is wrong because the way this is written, if you have a pre-existing structure which is taller than the house, you do not need to go to the planning board.
No, that's not what it says. It says for
What
a
is that?
pre-existing structure being converted to an ADU, any exceptions to the subordinate requirements must be approved by the planning board. Well, one of the subordinate requirements is you can't have a higher roof line.
Okay. I think what we may have meant to say was other than a pre-existing structure.
okay.
Oh, okay. I think that
That's what I thought we were saying, and I apologize for not.
Not what it says at all.
Okay, well, I don't have it in front of me, so I couldn't tell.
yeah. Well, and Jeff, and you can pull it up. If you look at Kirk's email that had the Zoom link, it also has a link to the document, and I'm looking at it while we're talking, so you can
I
be looking at it.
I just added in suggesting mode, other than a pre-existing structure being converted to an ADU, any exceptions to the subordinates requirements must be approved by the planning board.
Yeah,
think-
and I like that. And then Judy's concern would still be there about what if you're about to add a second story? So your structure's pre-existing, but you're about to, okay, sorry, Judy, I'll let you speak for yourself.
We can fix it. We can say a single-story building in which the ADU will require a second story must go to the planning board.
That's
I'm
fine.
fine with it.
Say that again, please.
A single-story building that,
Being converted to 2 stories for purposes of building an ADU.
did you catch that, Deborah?
There's 2 stories. I'll fix the spelling in a minute. For
And we're keeping the roof line in, and so we can say, and
Sure,
with.
sure.
converted
Built-
to
Sure.
an
So Kirk,
ADU.
you may have missed what happened here is I realized the word that I wanted in there was other than an existing structure, and that
Other
wasn't.
than
It's
a
a big
pre-existing
change.
structure.
So
Right.
just again, a single-story building being converted
To
to
2
2
stories.
stories for the purposes of
Okay.
Of an ADU,
Of an ADU,
ADU. Okay,
Let's go
needs
to the planning
approval from the
board.
planning board.
yeah.
needs approval from the planning.
And the planning board is being asked, is this subordinate? And that's a question the planning board can reasonably answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's aesthetic, there's a certain level of subjectivity, but not a lot.
Okay,
So Jeff, where was the language change that you,
Deborah got it, I think.
I got it.
okay, all right, good.
Whatever,
So-
can you show it? Because I'm reading, when you made updates before, I was watching your updates, and whatever you did this time, I didn't see your update.
Oh, how do I do that? I'm
You
sorry.
refresh your screen,
Oh, me or Deborah?
both of you.
Yeah, you need the other than, right. Other than the pre-existing structure being converted to an ADU.
Well,
Any
I know why.
exceptions must be approved, a
Okay.
single-story building being converted, just so we're clear on it,
Ah,
needs approval.
Okay, I think I just did it.
Yeah, I'm just grabbing some water. I'm coming right back.
Okay, so when Laura gets back, we'll,
That's good. No, I'm glad we caught this. It's great.
okay.
There's a
So,
little typo in there.
I
but-
know.
you know, typos will be fixed, but the intent is understood.
Yep.
So what we need to do is, do we need to read this before we make a motion? I think we do, just for the recording.
Yeah.
Read it for the recording, but then I
Yeah.
think it doesn't need to go outside of this
Yeah,
meeting.
do I need, I'm
Right.
gonna refresh and see if I see it, because I didn't see it
Please,
yet.
please, because I just
She's
did.
got it underlined right now, or she's got a section
Well, I
underlined.
understand that, but on the screen I'm looking at, I'm not seeing it, so let me just see if
So,
I've got it.
Deborah, would you please read the statement as it's
Sure.
been changed, and then we will
Okay.
make a motion.
Okay, I'm gonna read the whole thing because it's not that long. ADUs must be subordinate to the primary residence, period. This is defined as the following. Has a larger setback from the front boundary, is smaller than the main structure, and the roof line must be lower than the primary structure. Other than a pre-existing structure being converted to an ADU, any exceptions to the subordinate requirements must be approved by the planning board. And I redundant, a single-story building being converted to 2 stories for purpose of an ADU needs approval from the planning board. That's redundant, actually.
Well, it is,
Listen,
but it's further
If the main
specified.
house is a single story, it's not
Right,
redundant.
okay, thank you.
That's why I raised it, because I'm in a.
Okay, well, and that's, I did add it and
Okay,
that's
So
fine.
based on that, what was just read,
I'm
we
Did
good.
you see that, Laura? Did you get
I'm
that?
good. I said I'm good. I'm good.
All
I'm
right,
still
so we
not
have-
seeing it on my screen, you
Oh,
know, but even
you
though
heard
you
it.
said it's there, but I
All right.
heard it and it's good.
do we have a motion?
We have a motion. I've accepted the
All right,
modification.
Judith, we have a second? I'll second it. And so all in favor of the way it's currently read, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
I,
We have
Aye.
unanimous vote.
Yeah, and I agree with
Floor
how it was,
number
I
7.
agree with how it was read. My screen still doesn't show the change, but I agree with how it was read.
It's R.
thanks for the close reading, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Next one.
should there be a
Oh, wow.
restriction of 3 and 4-plex structures in the scenic overlay? Current proposal is that, that there's we have restrictions above 3 and 4. There are none allowed.
Right,
We do not show any restrictions of 3 and 4 in the scenic overlay. Now, our intent here, just wanted to remind people, our intent was thinking in terms of a single triplex or a single quad, that's basically the size of a farmhouse. And that's why we were saying we could allow it, because it'll be roughly the size of a farmhouse.
right.
And there are examples of that on Meads Mountain Road going up to the top on the right side. There's an apartment, a farmhouse. I think that's 6 apartments in it. So this is something, and then we did not discuss or specify that there would be there would be a development of multiple triplex and quads in the scenic overlay. So that is another matter, and that's what we have to address here. And so this is a comment about what we should do with 3 and 4. Judith?
Well,
And then Laura.
I'm having second and third thoughts about having any of them. I mean, the fact that we have pre-existing farmhouses is one thing, but visibility remains a concern. And even though there are no limits on the size of single-family houses, and some of them can be very much seen, the planning board is trying to do something about that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about 3 and 4 plexes. Definitely, there shouldn't be multiples. I in one project. That I
Right.
would say absolutely.
Yeah. And Laura and then Deborah.
We might, we refer to the view shed. So it may be restricted based on, nobody wants to see it. We don't want to encourage bigger buildings that everybody can see. The whole point of the scenic overlay is we want to keep the trees. We don't want to have people looking at houses. So maybe we can qualify based on, if you can see it from anywhere, it would be easy just to say we're not going to allow it. But the issue, I mean, there are parts of the scenic overlay because they're over 1,200 feet that nobody can see from anywhere. However, a lot of the scenic overlay you can see from somewhere because your neighbor might see you, even if you can't see it from the street. Your neighbor up high might see you. So we don't want to encourage a lot of eyesore in the scenic overlay.
Yeah. So I don't know who was first, Deborah and then Judith.
Yeah, I think so. There are a couple of things that come to mind, and Judith brought up the point that you could have a single family residence that's enormous in this, whoever brought that up, I think Judith.
Yeah, it was Judith.
A scenic overlay. And of course, it has to conform to all the restrictions in the scenic overlay in terms of visibility, lighting, and all those other restrictions. And with the revisions now to the scenic overlay, I think they're even going to be more substantial. What I'm wondering, I have a concern about restricting, and maybe we need to come up with a number. If someone put in, now forgetting about roads and traffic, and because scenic is the overlay thing, your roads and traffic are other issues. But if somebody puts up a couple of triplexes, and meaning at least there'll be some affordability there, and they're done in a way that's in scale and character with the area and meets all the other requirements of the scenic overlay, how is that worse than somebody building a big house with accessory structures that are not residences that are permitted in the scenic overlay? I feel that it hampers our ability to have places where small multifamilies can be built. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Deborah. Judith and then Laura.
I agree, except for one thing. It may be the case that the person with the monster house also collect cars. However, we know that we have to have enough parking for 6 to 8 cars if we're going to have a tri or quad. And that is different. And it requires cutting down trees, absolutely.
Well, that's where that's the rub. As you just said, if it requires cutting down trees, and that becomes another issue. So
Laura?
So the difference between what you were saying about, yes, it's true, somebody could build one single family that's huge. Yes, they could. But the thing about it is what I believe I've learned, and Judy will tell me if I'm wrong because she's closer to it than me. But the issue is when somebody has a lot in the scenic overlay and that lot is designated as buildable, by right, you have to let them put that single family house up. By right, you don't have to let them clear more land and put the 3 or 4plex. But we're stuck with a single family because by right, they're allowed to do it. They buy a piece of property. It was zoned that they can build. By right, they're going to build. We have laws.
They have 10 cars, they can build 10 parking spaces, but most people don't.
Yeah, right. But by right, they can build. And we're encouraging more of an eyesore in the scenic overlay, I think, if we allowed a 3 or 4plex, because now if we say, oh, by right, you can build a 3 or 4plex, it's like, you know, it goes against the goal of the scenic overlay.
Not
So-
even one,
What's that?
not even one 3 or 4plex?
Well, what I'm saying, you have to let somebody build a single family home by right. If they have a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah,
they
we
have
got that.
bought, and it's considered a buildable lot, you must let them build one. If we're now letting them build 3 or 4plex, then I think that they very likely will, not necessarily, but they will. And then you're gonna have more of the eyesore, because if you're letting them by right do that, and it's a small lot, then probably everybody's gonna see it, because they have to take down trees to put the lot in, and that now you got more. So
Can't be a small lot.
I
Okay.
think the 3 or 4plex, I'd prefer it come out. You know, if you said something about if it can't be seen by anybody, but neighbors up high can see stuff.
Yeah,
Jeff
So-
has
okay.
his hand up.
Yeah, I
too.
see Jeff's line. Go ahead, Jeff.
So I have mixed feelings on this. Part of me says we should rely on the scenic overlay code itself to
Mhm.
determine whether or not something's buildable, because you know, Laura and I are talking about that in the zoning review committee. If they are compatible with the scenic overlay and the view shed requirements, do we care? I mean, that's the only thing I can think about, because there are things that are technically in the scenic overlay that aren't scenic because they're behind a hill, behind a mountain.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
Right,
we don't care about those.
And
So
Peter
to
can
me,
jump in.
it's more of a view shed thing than it is necessarily all scenic overlay issues. But again, I don't feel strongly either way, truthfully.
Mhm.
I
yeah,
feel like having restrictions in scenic overlay is something that's been accepted by this town for a long time. And I'm okay with that continuing too. So those are my two thoughts. And I'm
Laura,
thinking to
and then
myself,
Deborah, and then I have a comment, so.
Yeah, so the view shed depends, you know, it's in the eye of the beholder, because the view shed that we look at when we're driving down 212 or 375, it might not be in our view shed, but if I'm a property owner that's up on the hill just like you, but I'm on the other hill, I'm looking over at you, just like when George Cross sent that thing that we looked at last ERC meeting, where he said, here's where I can see this house across the way. So it's in his view shed, even though it's not in mine, because I'm not up, I don't live where he does, right? So, so the view shed, you know, for who? You know, we can't protect everybody without saying don't do it.
Right, Deborah?
Yeah, so I know Peter Cross has talked about this, and I've heard at the planning board, and maybe this is what the zoning revision committee has looked at too. We don't have a baseline of what, and that the focus is on the scenic, and the question is scenic from where? And that, to me, is the crux of the question. I'm less concerned about a single 3 or 4plex building, one, because I think that's minimal, and cars really have, unless, you know, yeah, you can say, okay, if it's a single family, basically you've got carte blanche
Mhm.
for doing all kinds of things. But my goodness, if you are trying to build some more affordable housing and putting in something that's small, you're gonna be restricted more than the single family. So I personally, I don't know that we need to go beyond one of those, but if it meets all of the other restrictions in the scenic overlay, I think we're actually making it more restrictive than a single family house.
Judith?
Well, you wanted to say something.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Point-
I'll say it.
Oh,
after
go
Judith.
ahead, Kirk.
Well,
You
I
go
just wanted
first.
to add that as of right, duplexes are allowed.
Right, correct.
No
And I was,
change-
that's one of the
yeah.
things I was gonna say, and nobody's
No
doing
change
it.
to the law. The current law is that you can build a duplex anywhere. And so a duplex would be allowed in the scenic overlay. And so here we are discussing a triplex, and we're considering limiting it. That property owner could build a duplex. And not even have to go through the planning board. You know, because it's as of right. Anyways, just wanted to make that point.
I say okay to duplexes. I'm against the 3 and 4plex.
Yeah. Judith?
Frankly, so am I, and it's because of the parking requirement.
Oh,
And I'm more inclined to say, let's just not allow it just for the sake of, and it would be one more revision that we could acknowledge from our town based on comments, and because the triplexes and quads, they're not, the exceptions to this is probably, most of them are going to be built down in the valley, near the hamlets, near transportation routes. That's where this type of housing is going to be typically built. So and then if somebody wants to present an exception, they can go to the ZBA.
There you go. For all the things Deborah said, if they say, here's my exception, I could build a single family, but I'm building 3 or 4 places within the same footprint, and
Yeah.
I'm not taking in any more trees, even though I got to put more parking. Yeah, totally, I agree with that. They go to the ZBA.
Any thoughts on what's being proposed right now? The leaning is to remove the 3 and 4 plexes from the scenic overlay. Jeff?
Make a motion, then discussion and vote.
I
All right,
make a motion to not allow 3 and 4 plex in the scenic overlay.
That's already what there.
that's where we are.
I know, I didn't know if the motion was
We don't
made.
have a formal motion yet. Now we do.
I made the
Okay.
formal motion.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I second it.
And we have a second. Deborah, are we making note of this?
Yeah,
Um,
well, it's on the recording on.
It's on the recording. So any further discussions on this matter?
But I didn't actually make note who seconded or
It's
anything.
okay.
I made it, Judy seconded.
Yeah, so
No
now,
3 and 4
all
plex
in
in scenic overlay.
favor of removing 3 and 4 plexes from the scenic overlay, raise your hand and say aye.
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 We have 4 aye. I'm saying aye.
I see Deborah's.
She's
Okay.
like halfway. And so we have
4 and a
4 saying
half.
yes. We
Yeah,
have 4
4 and a
yes
half.
and
I'm willing
one-
to go with it if the ZBA is a remedy.
It is a
Yeah.
remedy.
ZBA is
always
always
a
a
Always
remedy.
is. Always a remedy.
Okay.
Okay, so we have unanimous. Thank you, Deborah. And
Okay,
thank you everyone for that.
Good discussion.
Yeah, it
Good.
was very good.
very good.
Yeah, let's let Deborah make her notes so that she doesn't lose it before we go on.
Yep.
Okay. Approved. Okay, so
Okay, number 9.
No, wait a minute. You really need to reword that.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Should there be a restriction? Yes, there should be a
Yes.
restriction.
and the restriction is,
Not allowed.
They're
Not allowed.
the restriction is prohibited. Prohibited,
The restriction is to prohibit.
right, prohibit 3 and 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For the scenic overlay.
perfect.
Okay, got it.
All right, I'm gonna read number 2.
Is that number 9?
Number 9, excuse me. All
Yay.
affordable housing and eligible for affordable housing definitions and reference need to be updated. And we will examples, and then we have examples there. This is a correction, basically. It's a correction.
Right.
So
And I
there's
explained it
no
the
there's no need for a vote here.
next meeting and word.
Then
And
we'll get the wording
then
exactly.
we'll get the wording exactly, but it does
Okay, great.
corrected.
All right, so on to 10, which is approved. Based on comments, the HOTF added a requirement that 10% of the units created by a major subdivision must be affordable units. Approved. Okay, Judith?
My only question is round it up, right, to the nearest unit.
Yeah, we can add that word to it,
Oh, good. Yeah.
round it up. And there's another provision in this later in our list, I believe.
I think it's the next one.
For there to be a scale. All right, number 11. This is a discussion point. Consideration of tiered, oh, here it is, of tiered percentages of affordable units based on total numbers of units in the conservation subdivision. So what this came up with was obviously, this was the Woodstock National. And we felt like, well, 10% is a drop in the bucket compared to what they're doing. And so could there be a scale? And my only comment to this is that we need to create the scale. We need to propose the scale before we can vote on this. That's my major point. And Jeff, you have your hand up, and then Laura.
A couple things about it. The scale may also serve as a mechanism that limits the number of affordable houses that are chosen. So as an example, if we say you need to build 10% of affordable houses, so you need to, if you build 100 units, you need to build 10% of affordable. I'm just making up numbers here.
Yeah.
If you build over 100 units, you need to make 15%. So in that case, someone that's building one more unit's got to build 3 more affordable houses. They're not going to do that. They're not going to go over that limit. They're going to stay at the lower limit of percentages.
Hmm.
So in that sense, I think it may actually, the tiered thing may limit the number of affordable
Yeah.
houses that get built because they're going to go into the tiers that's the lowest tier.
Hmm.
So the only, and truthfully, a percentage is inherently a tier.
Yeah.
The more you build, the more you do. Now, we may not be happy with 10%. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it needs to be 15%.
15%.
You know, and I think we can't go too big either, because if it goes too big, it becomes uneconomical
Yeah, for the developer.
for the
Yeah,
developer.
Yeah.
Which means we get zero. And I just want to emphasize, which means that we get zero affordable housing.
Right.
Hmm.
Not that they don't do the project, it means we get zero affordable housing.
all right, we have Laura and then Judith.
Couple things. One thing, I thought our maximum units was 60 anyway.
No, that's
Oops.
only for a floating residential district.
Oh, so you're saying that, but I thought that,
Smaller.
Huh?
but you can put in 60 if it's not floating, you can just go plop in 60
No,
units?
no. You take,
no.
you're subdividing the land first.
Right.
And when you subdivide the land first, each lot gets one lot, gets one
Each-
place.
Could
So
each lot could,
subdivision versus FRDs.
Right.
It's not an FRD,
okay,
it's a
so this
subdivision.
is, oh, so you're saying you got a huge property and you want to subdivide it into more than, this has to do with subdivision, okay, I got you.
The
Now-
Woodstock National is a subdivision. It's not an FRD.
Right now, the other question I have before I lose my turn here
Okay.
is that whatever national, I keep forgetting the name of it. Anyway, I
That's
thought
fine.
it was spread over. I thought it was spread over 3 towns. I thought Woodstock only had a piece of it. So
Two.
are we?
It's
So
2 towns, we have 500 acres.
We have 500.
okay, so it is significant.
Is very small.
The part in Woodstock is significant. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, significant, very. Judith?
Okay.
Well, look, until Woodstock National walked in the door, the largest subdivision we had in what, 30 or 40 years
Sam
was
Acres.
Sam Acres,
Yeah.
Acre.
which was, I think, originally like 14,
And
Right.
now it's
and they
11.
took it down to 11.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not talking about reality here. The question is, given where the large pieces of land are, where the small pieces of land are, what the carrying capacity is under the zoning, this is not a relevant question.
Well, we
Most
do
of it.
have the county requiring 10%.
So
No,
they,
no, I'm not saying we shouldn't have 10%. I'm saying
No.
worrying about huge subdivisions, it's not reality.
yeah.
Well,
We do need to acknowledge it though in the law.
Except for Woodstock National proves me wrong, but that's about the biggest piece of land that isn't up on the mountains
Yeah.
that is anywhere.
Yeah, Jeff and then Laura.
I was just gonna say what you said at the end, Woodstock National proves you wrong. So we do have one. We do have the potential for one.
But the Athena Woods is really the only place in town that's lowland and therefore relatively, if you don't count the wetlands, buildable, and it still has some steep slope areas.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is up in the R5 and up and R8.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I think to me, the question is, do we, when people hear the number 10, and this is what I've been seeing, right? When people hear the number 10%, they're like, oh, that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there may be.
That's the knee-jerk reaction. And I'm not sure they're wrong. It may not be enough.
I'm not sure they're wrong.
That's why I want, and I think, and I do think that there's kind of some of the reality. Some people just want to like stick it to Woodstock National and make sure that they do a lot of stuff. And I can get that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, is 10% the right number? Should it be 15%?
Yeah.
I think the scaling thing is going to not work well.
Okay, that's a first time I've heard the scaling thing. It may not be.
Well, that's the tiered
which
one.
is
That's-
number
that's-
11. That's
one.
the
That's
tiered
tiered
thing.
one.
Yeah.
I agree.
Laura?
So, here's my point of confusion. So say I have a 500 acres and say I'm going to subdivide it, but I'm going to sell off every lot. Then how does this 10% come into play? Because if I have 500 acres and I subdivide it to as many lots as I can based on the districts, and I subdivide it and sell off every lot, then whoever buys it is only building 1 unit. So this only come into play if the developer is gonna build on all the lots. Yeah, they're gonna subdivide and then build everywhere and then sell a house. So I'm just
Well,
getting
Jeff
confused by
can
this.
explain this. Go ahead, Jeff.
Basically, the way it works and the way it works in the, the 10% is you must identify which lots will be
Right.
designated deed restricted affordable lots.
Correct.
Which could be ADUs, it could be, apartments above it could be any number of things. It could be one lot that has multiple units on it, and then you reach your 10% and you're done, and
No,
all the
we
rest of them
can't.
could be.
No, we can't do that because we're dispersing them spatially. So we wouldn't. be
Well, I'm just saying that
segregating.
Fam Acres could have said, we're gonna take one of these lots and put 3 triplexes on it.
Well, now
Uh,
they could.
yeah.
But in the future, that may not be possible if you're trying to spatially disperse. See, I think that would have to be discussed as a would that
There's a
be-
planning board discussion.
as a planning.
Planning board discussion. Yes, Judith?
Don't we require more acreage? It's still the same amount of acreage per
We
unit
do. Yep.
according to zoning.
Yeah,
Correct.
we do require more acreage when it comes to
So if
multifamily
you put in
homes.
a triplex instead of a single house, you have to have a much bigger lot.
Yeah. Any other comment, Jeff?
The other part of this, I think it's something later that we have to talk about too, is just designating a lot as being affordable unit doesn't mean they're going to get it there. So I think there's something later on that says there must be an assurance that those affordable units are actually built. And
Right.
that's a different change later on that we can talk
That's a
about.
tough one.
Yeah. So right now, based on our discussion,
Can I just
Deborah, did you have a
one more
comment?
point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is inconclusive, but I feel like again, back to the Kingston form-based code, I think I have seen a higher number, whether it's 12% or 15%. So just as whether or not we stick with the 10%, or we want to do something more, I think it is worth maybe asking the county, are there any other examples that they can provide that's different from more than 10%?
Mhm.
Taking aside the tiered thing, because
Right.
if in fact this isn't high enough, do we want to consider something else? And then the affordable thing, you can't put off building the affordable
Right,
and then build your market rate.
that's already in the law.
That's already in the law.
But I was addressing the comment that Laura said is you subdivide 500 acres into 100 units and you don't build any of them. You just sell them. You're not going to be able to sell the affordable ones and no one's going to ever build them. So
Right.
that's why there needs to be a plan to have them built.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
Right.
So Judith, and then I'll have a comment.
Yeah, now I have to remember, that was part of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That people don't necessarily build. They sell
Yeah,
lots
they
to
sell lots.
individuals who then build.
Right,
And we do have
right.
to figure something out.
Yeah.
I want to suggest, however, that we disapprove 11. Because
Yes.
from our conversation, that's an item we can take off the list.
Right. I agree with that we not approve number 11, and we go back and adjust number 10 to a higher number.
And
From
talk to the
10%
county
to-
about the best way of making sure.
And, to 10 to 15, it would be my
Okay,
recommendation.
so Kirk has, I just want to be formal. Kirk has a motion to vote on number 11
Yes,
and
Yeah. Kirk
So
has a
moved.
motion. He
and
has
to
a-
go back and revisit
I'll,
number
I'll-
10.
and I'll second that.
That's a
We'll do
call to
one step at
question.
a
That's
time.
not a support.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we
I'll
do,
second
why don't we
that.
do number 11 first?
Okay, so
Get
all
it
in,
off there.
all in favor of eliminating number 11? Raise your hand and say aye.
We
Aye.
can't eliminate it. We're required to do the 10%.
No,
No.
No, it's
11
number
is the
11.
tiered.
well, this is
11,
this is
it's the
scales.
tiered.
Sorry, I'm in the
Tier.
wrong one.
You're in
Yeah.
the wrong one.
All right, so all in favor
10,
of
we need more
eliminating
input.
number 11, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Deborah?
Aye.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote on number 11 being eliminated. No
Okay.
tiered
And
percentage.
let Deborah mark it.
Okay. And now I have another motion, and that is we revisit number 10, which has to do with the percentage of units created for a major subdivision. to be greater than 10%. And we have the discussion. So Judith,
And consider some way of making sure that that affordable units get built as a priority. I don't know
yes,
what the wording ought to be.
understood. And so Jeff,
I think further down, I added that as a discussion point. I'm not sure if I did or not. I thought of it earlier, but I thought I added it to a discussion point.
the one that Judith just mentioned,
Yeah, about that you must build.
that it must get built. Yeah,
I don't remember that, but those are,
It should be part of 10, but I don't know how to word it.
yeah. So we're talking about revisiting number 10, changing the number and rewording some of the, and adding additional language.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna suggest wording for the
Number
whole.
10. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
All affordable, and this is, all affordable housing lots must be marked on the plat, which I think already exists. And there must be a plan in place to ensure their construction within the same time frame that market price housing is constructed.
wait a minute. Ensure their construction in the same
Time
Timeframe.
frame that the marketplace housing will be constructed. So it doesn't say what that plan is. The plan can be to sell it to a non-for-profit, which has the money and is able to buy
Yep.
it. Whatever, just as long as it's built
Exactly.
within the same time frame.
Very good.
And so that's an addition.
Second,
That's in addition to number 10, additional language to number 10. And then the other aspect of it is, so do we want a higher percentage other than 10%?
And
I'll
how-
suggest 15, see how people feel about that.
I
I'm
suggest
okay with
15 as
that.
well. I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
So again, I'm making a motion that, first of all, Deborah, let's rewrite, let's please read what has been changed to number 10, and then we'll make a motion to vote.
Okay, we now have all affordable housing lots must be marked on the plat, and there must be a plan in place to ensure their construction in the same time frame that market rate housing will be constructed.
Yep.
Based on comments, the HOTF added a requirement that 15% of the units created by a major subdivision must be affordable, rounded up to the nearest number.
Okay,
just a minor wording shift.
yeah,
I would suggest taking the created by a major subdivision and putting that all in the top. So it's all affordable housing unit. When creating a major subdivision, all affordable housing units must be,
Got it.
and then everything else is going to fall underneath.
yeah, that's better. Yeah. Does that make sense, Deborah?
Mm.
So we're going to start that line by saying, when creating a major
Yeah,
subdivision.
she's done that.
Okay.
Oh, creating, not created. Yeah.
All right. So Deborah, could you please read it and then we'll motion
Sure.
to vote.
When creating a major subdivision, all affordable housing lots must be marked on the plat, and there must be a plan in place to ensure their construction in the same time frame that the market rate housing will be constructed, period. Based on comments, the HOTF added a requirement, I could still say based on comments, that 15% of the units created by a major subdivision must be affordable units, rounded up to the nearest number.
Excellent. So all in favor?
Well,
And
I have one comment. And
Okay,
that, I agree with the intent. My worry is it's gonna be impossible to do. Because if I'm a major subdivision, I've created a major subdivision, now I've got, say, 5 lots, and that's a major subdivision, one of them has to be affordable. I'm gonna sell all 5 lots. I have no control over when the person that buys the affordable lot builds the house. How the heck do I know? So it seems impossible to make happen. I think it's a lovely thought. I just think if I were a developer,
well, the planning board could manage that.
But the county
Judith?
yay.
had already required us to do 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Judith, your comment?
It's an easy thing for the developer to solve. They can either build or they can work with Woodstock Housing Alliance or RUPCO or Habitat to
Mhm.
make a plan.
But if they want to subdivide and sell all 5 lots, then they're not building anywhere.
Well, they
Well,
still
one
have
of
to
those
work with the planning
lots
board. Yeah.
arrangements have to be made so that when building starts, this is taken care of. The easy way to do that is sell it to somebody who's gonna build now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
okay.
is it is possible, Laura, to
And if
manage.
it's a major subdivision, the lots can be different sizes. You don't have to give somebody 5 acres to build an affordable
Yeah.
house on it.
And
Right,
Deborah, you have your
okay.
hand up? Deborah?
Yeah, I just want to go back to this idea, not that I want to stall this, because I like Jeff's approach. Let's get through this and finish it today, because we're not done after today.
Got a few more.
But I'm wondering about going to the 15%. And without sort of checking to see what is happening in the planning space.
Mhm.
And only, that's my only question.
What do you mean?
And Jeff has a response to that.
Whether anyone else who's doing this right now, who's in it,
Oh, outside of Woodstock, you mean?
outside of
Yeah.
Who
Woodstock,
have experience with it. All right.
and has experience, they can inform our decision.
Yes. Jeff?
I think the answer is because of the rounding up thing. The rounding up thing is actually more significant than the 10% to 15% in actual numbers.
Hmm.
Because if you look at fam acres, right, that's 11 lots. 10% is 1.1 acres, 15% is 1.6 acre, 1.6.
Either way, it goes to 2 if you have to
Either way, it
round up.
goes to 2. So, and that's, as Judy pointed out, that's the largest subdivision in the last 30 years.
Right.
So it's unlikely that we're going to get
Or
you know, a significant number change other than something like Woodstock National. And they're looking at what,
91.
191 acres. So that would be,
No, 191 residences, but some of those, a fairly significant number, are not in Woodstock.
Right.
okay. But I'm going to use it that they're all in Woodstock because the math is easier.
Yeah, just a math.
It's like about 100 in Woodstock,
Okay.
including some affordable ones.
Okay. So the 100 in Woodstock would go to 10.
It'd be 10. It'd be 10
Now
or
it'll go to
15 if it was
15.
15. Yeah.
They're
So
already there.
they're already there. With
Yep.
their-
Because they're going to build 27.
Right.
Well, they weren't clear,
Yeah.
but somewhere
That's the number they put out. You know, something like that.
I think with them, I mean, they were over the limits that we would set, and almost certainly some. I think the question for them is integrating them, which we'll do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And
and
the other
also
thing-
whether that, I mean, it's not a conservation subdivision.
Right.
What
Right.
they're
And that's
proposing
And
is
there's
the
lots
other-
of other things there, not a
Yeah, they
conservation
gotta
subdivision.
contend with that.
They didn't put away the land for.
So I want to go back and I want to make a motion. I'm making a motion that we vote on number 10 as it has been revised, keeping it at 15% at this point,
I just want to make sure the word at least is there before 15%.
at
Oh.
least.
Oh, at least, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
At least.
At least 15%.
Okay.
More if
So
they
that-
want.
Right.
rounded up to the nearest number.
Okay, motion, making it, we need a second.
Second,
Judith, second. All in favor of the revision of number 10, raise your hand and say aye.
I,
Aye.
And we have a unanimous vote, number 10. And we're going to move on to number 12 because 11's been eliminated. Which is, by the way, it's a Nan needs to confirm and revise for clarity. So this is
Nan
not,
has confirmed. She
oh,
has
she
confirmed.
has confirmed?
Correct.
Nan confirmed and it needs to be revised. So what this is ensure that the language of affordable housing requirements ensures that the affordable units are integrated spatially with the market price units in both the FRD and the conservation subdivision, period. Should we require that affordable units be integrated spatially with the market rate
it's the
units?
same statement. I don't know why.
It
it's
is, I
in
don't
there.
know why it's being read, and we recognize that if there are more housing, a greater percentage of the housing should be required to be
That's
affordable.
a different statement. We already
That's-
said no to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
didn't,
said
I
no.
didn't split that up accurately, so take those last pieces were gone, so that
All
was.
right, so the last two
last two
statements,
sentences.
the last two statements beginning with should we require?
Yeah.
And which was a question, and then the other statement all the way to the end. So the way it's reading now is that ensure that the language of affordable housing requirements ensures that the affordable units are integrated spatially with the market rate units in both the FRD and the conservation subdivision.
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. All in favor as it's being read?
Aye.
We have a unanimous vote of number
Yay.
12. Yeah. We have two more, folks. We have a discussion point on number 2. Now this is, came from the chair
Yeah.
of the planning board.
If I understood the points he was trying to raise.
Yeah, I think it's stated here accurately.
Yeah, but
I-
I sent you guys an email based on the conversation, but I'm
Right.
fairly certain that's what he means. I think it's a good idea.
And
That
the idea is
Minor
idea is-
subdivisions
yeah.
of a certain size
of a certain size.
should be, the planning board should have the authority to require it to be conservation subdivision.
So what Peter's suggesting is that below the major subdivision, that we have between 2 and 5,
Right,
that those subdivisions could be,
right.
that the idea of a conservation subdivision could be mandated by
Yeah.
that subdivision. Now, how we're gonna write that? I
Well,
don't
if you
know.
look at the Coxsackie language,
Yeah,
they specify anything larger than 15 acres
anything larger than 15, I think,
in
right?
the original parcel. And that's a
Okay.
reasonable sort of place to draw the line.
Okay, so we're talking about basing it on the size of the parcel, property.
If it's a minor subdivision,
Yeah.
not just a lot line revision, which sometimes gets categorized that way, but a
Mhm.
real dividing of the land into 2 or 3 or 4.
Okay,
Laura has her
so,
hand up.
I do.
I'm sorry, Laura, you have your hand up?
I'm
Jeff?
totally okay. I'm totally okay with the idea of it. I think for us to vote on it, we need to have the exact words we're voting on.
Yeah, and so this is something that, Jeff, sorry to push this down the road a bit, but I think this one will require some language to
From
be
Nan, I think.
drawn, and from Nan, and then we can then bring it to the next meeting and vote on it accurately.
Okay, we'll
You
get.
okay with that, Jeff?
I'm thinking that to me, there's a distinction between a lot line revision, which is a minor subdivision, and an actual subdivision.
I'm agreeing with you. That's what I was saying.
I know you were. So how do we codify that in the language?
Well, leave it up to Nan.
Leave
We're
it up
gonna
to me.
push
Yeah.
this over to Nan
I
and let
mean,
her expertise
It's
be.
not good language as it stands. Every time we look at something and it's called a minor subdivision and they're just moving a lot or exchanging a little bit of land, it's silly.
So you're saying,
Not a
how do
minor
we
subdivision.
distinguish between a lot line revision and a minor subdivision
Yes,
in the
I
code?
also would be happier if it was a minor subdivision of into 3 or more. So 3, 4, and
yeah, 3 and 4.
I guess just 3 and 4 is also
3 and
left.
4.
Yeah, 2s are kind of like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's kind of my thought.
So,
So we're saying minor subdivision because we're not changing the definitions of things.
No,
We're just
Yeah.
saying a minor subdivision of 3 or more can be required to be subject to the conditions on the ground.
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm fine with that language.
Yeah. And we then will give Nan this, Deborah, and have her propose the language, and we'll vote
Okay.
on it at our next meeting.
Okay,
Any other further comments on number 13?
nope.
Great. All right, we're gonna move on. Number
Be
14, which
happy
is
to
our
tell
last one.
Peter that, I'll be happy to tell Peter that we did,
Yeah.
That
please.
we
for
made
him.
this, yeah.
because I said to him, I wish you had raised this in the meeting, but I will carry it forward.
Yeah, I wish
Yeah.
he'd done his work. Sorry. So 14 is a correction. The reader's aid box for FRDs needs to say also prohibited in R8. It
Yep.
says only not in scenic overlay or
Right. Or
what's
floodway.
floodway. Okay. Check this in all of the tables and consistency throughout the code. So this is a comment back to Nan, basically, that we have to make. And so there's really nothing to vote here. It's just a correction
Right.
point. And with that, we are now doing 90 minutes in, 90 minutes and 30 and
Good
3,
job, everyone.
93 minutes.
Yay.
Yay.
Good for
So
us.
let's just briefly talk about our meetings in the future, because we have at least 2 more meetings.
Right.
And then I wanted to state, before we go into, what Deborah and I are proposing is that we meet every week, every Tuesday. We tried to meet on Tuesday, but every Tuesday, meaning next week. I should get my calendar in front of me when I'm saying this. So this would be the 29th and again on the 5th. That those 2 meetings that we meet beginning at 10, our normal meeting time, and we prepare for the next meeting would be focused on the Housing Committee document, and 5th would be rounding up any other outstanding decisions to be made. So that's the 2 things I wanted to mention, is those 2 meetings, and that would be the end of our time. Now, what that means is that we would then be giving everything to Nan, and Nan would then write and complete by the end of the week on the 8th. Okay, and then we would have a week to prepare, to review and discuss, and then meet again in that following week, or maybe just conclude online to be determined, and then be prepared to hand it over to the town board.
Which is the date, which is that last date you're saying we would meet, the 12th?
The 12th could be the last time we meet, to where it would, but see, we would only, Deborah, then that would mean we only have between the 8th and the 12th. And so we may want to have that meeting a little bit later in the week,
I think so.
because we need to give people, Laura and company, the time to review.
Yeah,
everything
because
that's
now we're
been
talking
covered.
about actually looking at the code,
Right,
changes that are being made, making sure that they've all been made correctly. This is a good time for proofing eyes and stuff like that.
exactly.
So
So-
are we meeting on the 5th or are we not?
And we are meeting on the 5th.
Yes.
We have
I
2
will
more
have to
meetings.
change the dentist appointment, but I'm.
Okay,
probably-
so we're meeting on the 29th and the 5th. Okay,
From 10 in the morning to 11:30-ish,
yeah,
as
yeah,
usual.
for 90
Okay.
minutes, right?
Okay.
And then we're gonna be then giving everything to Nan.
Right,
And she promised to return by the end of that week.
right.
And then we would have the week of the 11th to review, and we have to plan a meeting towards the end, maybe on the 15th,
Yeah.
to where we can.
I'm gonna have trouble on I'm gonna have a problem on the 15th.
Yeah,
but-
so will I, so maybe the 14th.
14th,
So that'll give us almost a whole week up to Thursday, the 14th.
yeah.
And I just wanted to review these dates. These are not set in stone. We're just trying to get a sense of things, right?
Thank you.
And that would give us the conclusion of our efforts. At that point, we will be giving over the code to the town board at a said time, and then then it's in the hands of the town board from that point on. And the only thing we would then be required to do is make any revisions based on the town board's recommendations, which we would facilitate and work with Nan to do so.
And that would be after the public hearing
Public hearing,
is closed, or I don't know how that's gonna work.
right? It's up to the town board how they would manage that.
How that
But I
would
just
be
wanted to give
managed.
people a sense of things
Right.
on this. So we have 2 more meetings, and then a review meeting on the 14th.
Oh, good. Okay.
Laura?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you all sync up with Bill, because whenever the public hearing is, I think it has to be voted on by the town board ahead of time to say, we're gonna have the public hearing on this date. So
Yeah.
just be making sure you're
We're
getting with Bill.
synced up. We are
Yeah,
synced
we
up.
did sync up with
Perfect.
Bill. He actually mentioned it on this radio show today, which
Yeah.
I'm gonna send everybody the
Kind of took us by surprise.
link. And you
Sure,
can see
sure.
me below the microphone.
Wait, was that at 7? Was that at 7 a.m.? That was a radio show, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
7:30 a.m.
7:30.
But they video, but they had a.
Oh, they video.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So it
And
matters.
Richard,
It matters
and
how you
Richard
look.
Hepner was there,
Okay, cool,
after I was, yeah.
Yeah, Judith?
cool.
Now I've forgotten what I want to say.
Oh, okay, all right. So I want to make a motion to close, but before I do that, any final comments on today and what we've done?
Well, thank you. It's amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
yes,
Read the draft read the whole thing.
Yeah,
Just
46 pages, it's long, so we should be
Yeah,
getting
take your
getting an
time.
idea of whatever it says.
take your time so you can see.
And
what-
we still have to do the housing committee one.
And we have to do the housing committee.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
have another subgroup
it's not that. We'll
Sorry.
do that next week.
next week.
All right.
Cool.
I
I
make
have
a
another
motion we
housing
close.
meeting, had 2 more housing meetings today.
So do we have
Motion to
the,
adjourn.
oh wait, do we have the housing stuff to look at too, or are we waiting to get it?
We're gonna
Wait.
wait to get, we're waiting to
We're
get it.
waiting to get it.
But you
Oh,
have
are?
it, you have
no.
it, and but it's just raw. There's nothing, we haven't
We
responded.
haven't responded yet. We just have
No.
the comments.
So we should look
Right.
at the raw stuff. We should look at the raw
Oh,
stuff. for
wait. Didn't we attach the housing committee
We
stuff to
did.
the end of ours?
We
So it's
did.
there.
It's
it's there.
there. You can
It's in
read
the
it.
document? It's in
Oh,
the
it's in the
document?
46-page document,
It's
includes
in
the
the
housing.
46, it's in the
Does.
46-page document.
Okay,
Right,
all right.
Take a
perfect.
look
So,
at it.
um,
Perfect, you guys well.
all right, we have our homework. Be prepared for the next meeting on the 29th to review the housing committee's comments and be prepared to discuss and vote.
And
Motion to
I'll second Judy's motion to adjourn.
Okay. We are adjourned.
You have to
Thank
vote first. I vote.
All right,
Everybody gets to
everyone.
vote on the adjournment. They just are eager to leave.
Everybody always says, yay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Well, it's
Thanks
great
for
to see everyone.
everything.
Thanks, everybody.
All righty.
Over
Bye.
there.
Bye.
Bye.